Hey, good morning, everybody. This is John Rhodes, and welcome to week one of our class. I'm very excited. Hope you're very excited as well. I'm sure some of you are, some of you aren't. But I do really enjoy teaching this class and facilitating discussions in this class, and looking forward to the next 8 weeks as we go through some important healthcare, legal, and ethical issues. So I post these videos no later than every Monday, sometimes the weekend before, but usually Monday mornings. Um, and I strongly encourage you to review these videos. Um, they will typically not take more than 10 to 15, sometimes 16, 17 minutes of your day, and I think they'll be well worth it. And hopefully you find some value in it. I like to, and students that I've had in the past have commented they felt that they were pretty valuable, just from the aspect of maybe explaining and going through different concepts. Sometimes it's with respect to explaining legal analysis and how to perform a legal analysis, the different elements that go into a legal analysis, which you'll become very familiar with over the next 8 weeks. Sometimes it's easier to grasp those concepts when they're verbalized as opposed to reading them on a web page or a piece of paper. So hopefully you find some value. I try to make myself very accessible in this class and very available. So please, if there is a question, do not hesitate to reach out to me. My contact information is in the introduction announcement that I posted a couple weeks ago. So this first video installment, I typically just try to introduce you, nothing too heavy. In this one, I try to just introduce you to what we're going to be going through the next 8 weeks, and towards the end, I'll give you some what I feel are keys to success in this class that I've witnessed over the last what was it? Just over a year that I've been teaching this class for Southern New Hampshire. So, uh, anyways, you go to my introductory post. You see what I do for my career, how involved I am in the healthcare world. I'm a healthcare attorney, and I've been doing this for 11, 12 years or so. I started my career in the great state of Kansas in private practice with the healthcare practice group there. And we represented all kinds of different providers, from hospitals to critical access hospitals, health clinics, provider groups, individual providers, you name it, and we represented them in some sort of healthcare capacity. So 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago, we moved to Denver, Colorado. I was in-house counsel with DaVita, which is a large kidney dialysis provider. Spent some time working for DaVita Medical Group, which is a 5-state multi-specialty group. In the last year and a half, I've been back in private practice with the healthcare practice group at this current law firm that's based out of Phoenix, but I work in their small Denver office, and I really enjoy it. I kind of just lucked into the healthcare world. That was my first job at a law school. I applied for an associate position with a law firm, and it happened to be in their healthcare practice group. So I kind of lucked into it and have enjoyed it immensely. So I really enjoy the topic and look forward to the discussions with you over the next 8 weeks. So this class is broken up into two pretty distinct components. I think this first week, if you look at the discussion question, if you look at the assignment, maybe it's this week or next week, we kind of just get a introductory feel for some ethics concepts, principles, and theories. But then we dive right into the legal component of the class. And so the first half of the class is really talking about the legal issues. There's one case It's the Ituraldi case that we'll all be studying. You don't have to go out and find a case to study. We'll be studying we'll all be studying the same case. It's the Ituraldi case, and there's a link to it in the module. So if you have problems finding that, please let me know. But we'll be discussing the legal components of that case, and then the second half of the class we'll be discussing the ethics components as applied to that case. So please, I think it's very important to get very familiar with the facts of that case. Don't just gloss over it, because that's really the main project that we'll be working on each week throughout the class. So please be very familiar with it. So, I think probably all of you, and I know in past classes I've taught, everyone is pretty much already in the healthcare field in some clinical capacity usually, or administrative capacity. And so you're very familiar, I'm sure, with the fact that the concept of ethics permeates the healthcare field. I mean, from an individual standpoint, from a institutional provider standpoint, from healthcare delivery standpoint, just the question of, now that we're in an election cycle, you hear a lot about healthcare and whether or not it's a right or a privilege, end of life issues, which we'll be reviewing this class. Even insurance coverage, denying coverage due to pre-existing conditions, even narrow networks or plans that don't cover high-cost illnesses or patients. Are there ethical issues behind that? I mean, even the concept of for-profit insurance companies, is that not really a legal issue, but is it an ethical issue? And everyone will have their opinion on it. And in this class, one thing I will emphasize throughout this class, I'm not really interested in a right or wrong answer, because I think when you talk about ethics, for the most part, we're not talking about right or wrong conclusions. We're talking about how do you get to those conclusions. So what's the analysis? And as long as your analysis is reasonable and you're applying facts, the proper theories and principles, and on the legal side, the proper rules, applying facts to those rules, then I think your outcome, your conclusion will be reasonable. I'm not concerned about is it the right or wrong answer. I'm concerned about, is your conclusion reasonable, and how did you get there? What's the analysis that you employed in order to get to your conclusion? That's the important piece, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. So just as we start out the class, one thing I always try to get out there and make sure everyone's aware of is, anytime you talk about ethics or legal, well, I guess mostly on the ethics side, particularly in healthcare, it can quickly turn into a political discussion, which I would really prefer to avoid. Obviously, healthcare will be a hot topic, especially like I mentioned in this election cycle. I think it's on the top of everyone's minds. The important piece is we go through the discussion posts and replying to discussion posts. It's really important to keep it respectful and to understand that everyone has their own opinions, which is awesome. I hope that people don't all think the same way I do, and I think that would be really boring and sort of dangerous. And I like the fact that we all have different opinions and thoughts, and we should understand that that's the fact, that everyone has their own opinions and thoughts, and we should respect that. So I've only had to bring this up once to a student in a prior class, just individually, in terms of being respectful. So usually it's not an issue. I just like to get it out there from the very beginning so people are aware of it. Just to give you a taste of some of the questions we'll be discussing throughout the class, I think they're really interesting. If you look through your textbook, I really like the question about, a physician from another office steps into your office and asks to see the chart of a neighbor whom he believes may have an infectious disease. Kind of interesting. This is a question I bring up every class, maybe a little bit more timely with the coronavirus going around. He states that the neighbor is a good friend and that she will not mind if he reviews her medical chart. Is it legal for you to give the chart to this physician? Um, so, is it permissible? Should it be? What's the analysis? That will be something that's going to be a common theme in this class. What's the analysis? What's the rule? What are the facts? Apply the facts to the rule. What's your conclusion? I think that's a good question to sort of tee that process up. What about someone who presents to the emergency room and needs urgent care? What if the person doesn't have insurance, or that particular emergency department is out of network with the patient's plan? Is it legal or ethical to turn away the patient who is in need of emergency care? I like this question because it sort of, in my opinion, conflates, or at least connects, the legal side and ethical side of healthcare. I think most of us would agree that there are ethical concerns with someone who has a life-threatening injury showing up to an emergency department and not getting care because they don't have insurance. I think most would agree that that would present some ethical concerns. Well, collectively as a society, we generally believe that, and so that led to a law being enacted and codified, which many of you are familiar with, I'm sure, especially if you work in a hospital, called EMTALA, or the Emergency Medical Treatment Active Labor Act, which prohibits turning someone away who has a medical emergency without a screening and receiving stabilizing care. So that's just a good example of how we as a society have a certain ethical belief that has turned into a law that governs behavior in the emergency department for these types of issues. So we'll talk about the business of healthcare. It's usually a really exciting discussion for many. One time I was recording a discussion on the business of healthcare. Like halfway through it, I stopped myself because I actually started hearing the words coming out of my mouth and realized how incredibly boring that was coming from the other end. So hopefully it's not too boring. We'll talk false claims, reverse false claims. We'll talk about that. Physician disciplinary cases. We talk about scope of practice and disciplinary codes of conduct and things like that. I've represented a couple of physicians, one neurosurgeon and one gastroenterologist, in their physician disciplinary issues. And those are usually the most interesting stories. I guess the moral of the story for both of those cases that I was involved in is don't lie to patients or their families, and don't mess with medical records. So those are good takeaways for any clinician, for sure. So anyways, I just wanted, that was just sort of introductory piece to what we're going to be doing over the next several weeks. Again, two distinct components of this class: the legal side and the ethics side. But the process will be very similar for both as we go through and study rules, legal issues, ethics concepts, principles, theories, and apply the facts of the Ituraldi case to each of those components. So just real quick, I want to give several points of what I think are keys to success in this class, just based on what I've seen. I've taught this class several times now, and I've sort of compiled this list and added to it with each class, and so hopefully they'll be valuable to you. Number one, I think it's important to engage in the class and have fun with the material. Some of the discussion questions are certainly more interesting than others, but engage in the class, respond to your classmates, have fun with the material, enjoy it, and be interested by it, and I think that makes a huge difference in the value that students get out of the class. Number two, turn in assignments timely. This is really important. I've seen great work product from students in the past that I've had to deduct because it just wasn't timely, and I hate doing that because my biggest objective in this class is for you to feel like you're getting value out of it, and to deduct points for excellent work product that I may very well give 100% of the points to, just really killed me. So I hate doing that. So please, if there's an issue with turning in assignments timely, or if something comes up, which invariably something comes up for students in every class that I've taught, just please communicate that with me ahead of time and let me know. I'm very flexible on these things. I because like I said, I'm not here to. My goal and objective is not to deduct points. It's to help you find value out of the class. So that's what I want to happen. And if you do, then regardless of how we get there, I feel like I've done my job. So the next is study and understand and follow this concept of legal analysis. I can't emphasize enough how important that will be throughout the class. If you go through your book, you're gonna see that they teach the IRAC method of legal analysis, and it's IRAC. It's an acronym. This stands for Issue, Rule, Analysis, and Conclusion. Well, no. Is it analysis or application? I don't recall, but regardless, issue, state the issue. What is the legal issue? In order to really perform an analysis, you have to understand what the issue is. What's the issue? What is the rule? You got to know what the legal rule is. It's a law. It's whatever it may be. You got to understand what that rule is. You have to understand what the facts are, because the A is apply those facts to the rule. You have a set of facts, you have a rule. Okay, well, how do those facts apply to that rule? How did the rule apply to those facts? That's your analysis. You're going to go through that. And then once you've gone through that, you should be able to easily lead me to a conclusion. Maybe the conclusion is that there's no legal concern, or there's no legal risk, or no law was violated, but that's the process, and it's so important to follow that process. Issue, rule, analysis, and conclusion. IRAC. Follow that. Now we're going to go through. The legal component that we're studying in this class is really a malpractice claim, which is negligence. There are 4 elements to a negligence claim, a malpractice claim. And it's important for you to know those elements, because when you do your analysis, you're going to have to do that analysis for each element. So first element is duty. What is the rule? When is a duty created? What is the rule there? How do you know when there's a duty of care? The second element is a breach of that duty. What is the rule? And then causation. Did the conduct cause the harm? And there are 2 types of causation. There's direct causation and proximate causation. What is the rule? Go through that IRAC analysis for each element. And this will be a common theme in my feedback, when I grade papers. And then finally, your conclusion. Based on your analysis, how do you conclude? Is the element present? Is it met based on the facts and the rule? What is your conclusion? So that's showing me those steps in your analysis for each element is very important. And if you have any questions about that, of course, I'm available to assist. This class, like I said, is all about analysis. I'm not as concerned about the conclusion. You got to state a conclusion, but it's more important to show how you got to that conclusion. So it's the analysis that's important. So, and the same goes on the ethics side. So on the ethics side, you're not going to have legal rules, but you're going to have principles and theories, and you're going to generally follow that same process, applying facts to those principles and theories. Finally, I've already taken too much time, but finally, follow the rubric section by section. That's how I grade. And oftentimes I'll grade in the rubric itself. There are a couple assignments it doesn't make sense to do that, but for the most part, I grade in the rubric itself. So it's whatever the rubric says, that's how I grade, and that's how I judge whether or not the requirements were met. So it'll be very important to follow that pattern in order. Section headers are super helpful, so I know where one section ends and one starts. All that would be helpful. So anyways, this is longer than I intended, and normally the videos don't go this long. So please reach out with any questions. Super excited to get started. If you have any questions, let me know, and good luck, and looking forward to the discussion and engagement. So have a great week.